Tua Tagovailoa takes his next steps towards a return to the practice field for the Miami Dolphins today. What can and can't be fixed for the Dolphins offense this season with the return of QB1?
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to thank all of our everydayers for tuning in here on Locked On Dolphins because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are looking at the offense and the situation that this offense finds itself in, from the balancing act with the return of Tua, and I think that's some of the responsibility of this coaching staff, the uncontrollables for quarterback play, and the controllables for quarterback play. And that's where we're going to start. The things that I think can tangibly get better with the return of your starting quarterback. The first and most obvious thing is the menu of which you have to pick your plays from is bigger. That's a good thing, and it's also a bad thing. And that gets into the balancing act we'll talk about a little bit later here on the show. But for Miami, especially in retrospect, after watching how the team tried to play against the Colts, I think you saw a watered-down effort to try to play a get-by game and play a close margin of error game. And the Dolphins did it very well in the first half and fell apart in the second half and couldn't score any points. And they lost a football game that they frankly should have won, and now have a total mess on their hands at 2-4 with a chance to get your starting quarterback for the final 11 games of the season back. But being able to do more does allow you to be more difficult to defend and gives you more answers. I think the exception that I had with how the Dolphins tried to do less is they really didn't change the core principles of what they did. It was as if Mike McDaniel has been calling games through the lens of, this is what we are offensively. Somebody needs to step in and run it, and the rest of the team is going to get the reps as though they would as if we were running our regular offense. And that continues to be the biggest exception that I have had with how the team tried to work through this stretch, because they did the past two games adopt more of a run the ball type of mentality. They leaned into this past game against the Colts. They ran the ball between the tackles, I think, on 30% of their runs. Like, it was a much larger percentage of getting downhill at teams. Did I like the personnel evaluation of playing Devon Achane over Jaylen Wright, who got 6 snaps? No. And I think Achane was fine. Achane had a good game. But there has to be room for your biggest back, your most dynamic and biggest back in this recipe, in 6 snaps. It's just not it. But that's one of those things you can't control. You can control being more balanced offensively. Teams really have not given a lot of respect to anything the Dolphins have the ability to do to pass the ball. There's been big voids. There have been guys that have been open, but you're calling the plays that are the core principal plays as if you had your starting quarterback in the game, and your backup quarterbacks can't run it. But they continued to call it that way, even though they narrowed the scope. One thing that I would like to see as far as involvement is the Dolphins to come out and stay committed to the run game and get some basic pitch and catch completions. I think the usage of wide receivers, Jaylen, Waddle, and Tyreek Hill, after that was like a big question mark for early in the season against Buffalo, and contributed directly to a couple of critical turnovers in the first half of that game that quickly snowballed on you. I think that's normalized a little bit more as well. I think you've seen the personnel usage lean into the tight ends and fullback room a little bit more. Now there's some personnel usage I think you can do there to continue to get better in that regard for guys to play more / less. But nevertheless, your targets need to go to your best players. I think you have 3 definitive passing targets right now with maybe a 4th lingering and then a wild card. You do have Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle. Those guys, of course, should get a volume of targets. Jonnu Smith's emergence the last 2 weeks is a nice development that I think Tua Tagovailoa can take a step further. I think with Tua having been away, having been forced into middle of the field targets for your tight end who can win after the catch, and you've seen the ways that he wins after the catch, he has emerged as kind of the Jonnu Smith has the missing option you had last year as a third option to kind of get some targets to. I think that's something that Tua can help get more legs out of as the starting quarterback of this team. River Craycraft, when is he back? I think the chemistry that he had with Tua is obvious. It's palpable. You go back, watch every time they've been on the field together. There's been a strong chemistry there. I think that taking the place of Braxton Berrios is another massive upgrade that it just gives you more reliable options and places to go with the football. And the wild card is, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. Like we'll see what ultimately ends up happening with that player and fit within the offense. I did feel like you go back and watch the game against Indianapolis. That target that he had at the end of the first half, Odell, if Tyler Huntley's on time with that ball, he took an extra shuffle hitch before throwing the ball on the 3rd down. That was an incomplete pass and forced Miami to kick the field goal. I do think Odell at least gets the reception, if not kind of split the seam between the safeties and maybe challenges to get down inside the 5-yard line and maybe score. So from a timing element, that is the most obvious thing of the passing offense to get more teeth in the passing offense. Miami's passing game productivity this year has been pathetic. That's pretty well established, but they have 3 passing touchdowns on the season. They got their first one since week 2 against Indianapolis, and it was a pass behind the line of scrimmage. Passing yards in the game since Tua has left the 4 games, 140, 78, 179, and 149. It's like you're not going to win a lot of games doing that. So I think the pass productivity, the touches for your better receivers, and I think that trickles up into the play of your top talents on offense, which your 2 best players, sans wherever the quarterback lands on that spectrum, is Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. And those guys have been non-factors. Their increased production and opportunities and targets, this team's going to score more points. And I don't think they're going to scratch to claw out 20 like they did in week 1 against Jacksonville. And part of that is because I think you will see the return of the explosive plays. That's what helped you win against Jacksonville. But Miami, I think right now is a better offensive unit when you remove the element of explosive passing plays from the equation. The offensive line has had a lot of continuity. They've had 3 guys play over 415 snaps already on the offensive line. Their second highest snap taker from a snap perspective last year, that was a starter at the beginning of the season, played like 55% of the snaps, like 520 snaps or something like that. So to have 3 guys and then a 4th who, and that being Rob Jones, who missed like a half of 1 game through 6 games, this unit has had a lot of time on the field together. And I think that is where you get into the balancing act of where this team has grown since we last saw Tua. And again, please don't misconstrue this. I should have probably led with this. Please don't misconstrue this as Tua comes back, everything's going to be better, everything's honky-dory, there's no problems in Dolphins football land. Like, there's things that are issues, fundamental issues. There are fundamental limitations with the team, and you're at 2-4. It's not a great place to be. But as you evaluate what things look like moving forward, you're trying to anticipate what should we expect to get better and what should we expect to not get better. Now we're going to look at that second part, the uncontrollables that Tua and better quarterback play should have no direct impact on. That's coming next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. If you want to get down to Hard Rock Stadium this weekend for Dolphins Cardinals, I'll be there. And first one this season, first in-game season experience for me. You know, I got my tickets through Game Time. I took all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time because Game Time has all of the local venue concerts, comedy, theater, sporting events, more, you name it. You can have panoramic views from your seat so you know exactly what sight lines you're buying before you commit to tickets. You can get the tickets delivered directly to your phone in just a few taps. And best of all, there's all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees. When you commit to a pair of tickets with Game Time, you know exactly what price before you put the tickets into your cart. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time. What time is it? It's game time. If you're looking for a little action this weekend, make sure you get into it with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings. Prize Picks is made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot up to winning at least 100 times, up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, they are the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks keeps your lineups live. It is the best place to get real money sports action because it is you against the house, not you against those 10 million other active members. So sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that lead to even bigger payouts. So download the Prize Picks app, use code LOCKEDONNFL, get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So what can't Tua bring? Obviously, he can facilitate the ball to your playmakers better. He can facilitate a more balanced offensive effort, and that will lead to more points. But there are things that have been giving this team issues that I don't think fall upon Tua. And one of those big ones for me has been some of the personnel implementation. Go back to the Colts game, and the Dolphins have a 3rd and 7 early in the game, and they have a stack to the left-hand side, and it's Jaylen Waddle and Malik Washington. And Jaylen Waddle's up on the point. He's the man on the line of scrimmage. And Jaylen Waddle runs a fade up the field, and Malik Washington running underneath of that takes the free release, and he runs a shallow cross. And all the receivers on the right side effectively set up the block. The intention being this is kind of a pseudo screen to try to get a catch and run for first down. That's fine. But when Jaylen Waddle finishes the game with 1 catch for 9 yards and you're getting off coverage, why isn't Jaylen Waddle running the under route to get your faster, better, more dynamic player more involved in the passing game? Like, those kinds of issues don't go away with Tua Tagovailoa's return to the lineup. The implementation and the opportunity, that was still Malik Washington's opportunity. And maybe you say, well, that's they wanted to play off of Jaylen Waddle and create a little extra space. And if you do, that's fair. There is a time and a place to use your best players to create spacing for other players. It's totally fair. But on the same play, the receiver that released out of the backfield as the running back on that play to set up what would have been the edge block to get the perimeter on a safety was Devon Achane. And that goes back to the Dolphins trying to get involved in the running game in one of the earlier games this season. I think it was Tennessee. And they were obviously you're not going to have a lot of success getting up the middle because of T'Vondre Sweat and the presence that he has is kind of a game wrecker. So you're trying to get outside. And now you're trying to run a little bit of screen game. And who did you have blocking the apex defender on one of your screen opportunities, Braxton Berrios. All 185 pounds soaking wet, Braxton Berrios, trying to block a linebacker. And he predictably ran right through, and the play got blown up before it could convert for a first down. And it's like the little attention to detail pieces like that you would think this offense maximizing the limits, pushing the limits of what the offense is capable of. You would think the little things of who's the right kind of body type to have this. And even if it's not Alec Ingold, because you don't want to have a back on the field that gives you a certain personnel grouping you're trying to facilitate. You got two bigger backs than Devon Achane to block. You got Jonnu Smith as a player who was on the field on the other side of the formation, away from the screen, not throwing a block, and Braxton Berrios to the side that you ran the screen at earlier in the season. Like little things like that. And I know like Jonnu Smith's not a great blocker, right? But is Jonnu Smith and all 245 pounds of Jonnu Smith a better blocker in space than 185-pound Braxton Berrios? The answer is yes, right? So little things like that, the pre-snap attention to detail. Does Tua cover some of that up? Sure. But y'all got a lot of road games left to play this season, and this offense really hasn't traveled all that well in the Mike McDaniel era because of all of the layers and all of the things that are put on top of each other and compound on top of each other to put all the layers into what any individual play is supposed to be. There's more margin for error for the players. Now, have they walked that back a little bit without Tua and with the backup quarterbacks? Yes, to their credit, that is one of the things that they have done. But that doesn't get fixed with Tua. I think there's a responsibility on the staff to find a little bit better balance of saying, hey, we need to push some buttons to get something going here. Let's put more window dressing on our plays. I don't think you have to do that. I think the offensive line, for all of what it has been maligned to be, I thought it played one of its best games of the season against Indianapolis. They've run for over 180 yards in each of the last two games. Some of that has come, a lot more of that has come without shifts and motions. There's been growth in the continuity of that group, which is obviously so important, and you're getting close to Halloween, and I won't say anything about starters and who's available and who's not, and I'm going to knock on wood, and you guys can hear me do it because I don't want to jinx anything, but like there's been some nice developments on that front that I don't think have to put so much weight on the quarterback. And frankly, I've done my in-season gradings for every game thus far this season, and for the year, there's been 2, 4. I'm going to count it out for dramatic effect and to fully let what I'm about to say sink in. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. I bet you can't wait to figure out where I'm going here. 26, 28. There have been 30 players who have taken at least one offensive snap for the Dolphins offense this season. 30 players. That includes guys like Robbie Chosen and Lester Cotton and Braxton Berrios and Grant Dubose and Malik Washington and Patrick Paul and Tim Boyles, Tyler Huntley, Skylar Thompson, like the whole group, right? Like everybody who's taken snaps this year. And for the season, in my grading, and the way that you grade is it's 0 is neutral or 2 expectation. You can go by half-point increments up to +2 on any given play for spectacular plays and all the way down to -2 on any given play for a catastrophic play. Like Alec Ingold fumbling in the red zone on a fullback dive with wide zone tracks from the offensive line on 1st and 10 in a tie ball game against the Colts. That's a -2. And it would be however many, like the maximum amount of points that I could take for a single individual play. That's what I would give that play. That's to quantify, right? The Tyreek Hill touchdown against Jacksonville, that's a +2. Right, so that's your swing and spectrum on, and I've graded every snap for every player on every play. Tyler Huntley is the second worst per snap grade for any of the 30 players on offense this season. 29th out of 30. And he's taken 183 snaps at quarterback. That's the most of any player at the position this season for the Dolphins. The only player who graded lower was Skylar Thompson. Let that sink in. The two furthest below expectation grades out of 30 players for the Dolphins offense this season, leaving more on the field, were Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley. Now, Skylar Thompson missed evaluation from everybody involved. We did that conversation yesterday. Tyler Huntley just got here, had a certain definitive set of strengths, and you haven't asked him to play to those. I don't think it's a coincidence. The only quarterback run that you called against the Colts went for 6 yards and probably could have gone for another 6. But you didn't call him. It's what he does best. You had a bye week. You didn't do it. So, like, Tua doesn't fix that element, that disconnect between what you have and what you're using. But he does control the floor and the ceiling of the quarterback position. And the two guys that you've had, Tim Boyle has been slightly below expectation on about 50 snaps this season. And that included what was a -2 on the 4th down at the end of the game, because you had 4th and game with 11 seconds left, down 6 points, and you threw the ball out of bounds. You can't throw the ball out of bounds. Can't do it. He did. And so you didn't even give your team a chance to win the game. So that was -2. So Tim Boyle, second best rated quarterback on his limited work. But Huntley and Thompson is your two preferred starters in the absence of your starting quarterback, the two worst graded players on a per snap basis. And Skylar's about twice as bad as the third worst graded player out of the 30, and that was Robbie Chosen. So Robbie Chosen in about 30 snaps this season was the worst position player or offensive lineman. Skylar Thompson graded twice as bad as him. So Tua will control that. But the other myriad of issues that have shown with attention to detail and personnel usage and style of play and game planning decision, like, Tua is not going to change all of that. There's a balancing act to be had. We're going to get into that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you stick with us. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return over on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page as where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Dolphins up to -3 on the spread on FanDuel for Dolphins Cardinals. So the expectation there is obviously the return of Tua Tagovailoa. If you think Tua's return is going to spur a big offensive explosion, Tyreek Hill certainly seems to think so. Maybe Dolphins -3 is some action that you want to get on. If you get in closer and they announce and confirm Tua's ready to go, maybe that number goes up. You can get yourself a good buy on FanDuel. So again, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. We alluded to this already, but I think the biggest balancing act that Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins offense needs to undertake with the theoretical and hopeful for my sanity and enjoyment of watching these games, hopeful return of Tua Tagovailoa is this. You did certain things to be more accommodating for quarterbacks who were less in the weeds on the offense. I think you need to do that with the return of Tua. More complicated, more complex, more layers is not always better. And I do think with the return of Tua, staying more committed to the run game, being a more run-balanced team as far as these the neutral down pass-run ratio, I would love to see that continue to trend more so than it did in the early years of the McDaniel era into a neutral or run lean. Not all the way, because you're obviously going to have big-time matchups and big-time opportunities, and your quarterback who sees the field the way that you do as a play caller is going to open that opportunity for you. So that's the first thing for me. I think you need to not revert back to everything all the time. What is that? Is that Bo Burnham? If you don't know Bo Burnham, please disregard. But that's the first step, I think, to being successful with the return of Tua. I think the other thing for Mike McDaniel and balancing Tua and what he does well is the middle of the field passing attack. I think you need to hit some more jabs with not Waddle and Hill, personally, particularly with Jonnu Smith, in order to kind of create a little bit better integrity. And if teams are going to just be content to give it to you, then keep taking it and don't force those targets. Now, everybody wants Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle to be more involved in what they were against Indianapolis, of course. But you could pick your spots. And if you're going to run schemed and designed targets and opportunities to get the ball out to certain guys to set up run after catch opportunities, make sure those guys are in those positions. And if that means you got to put them on the same side and play one of them off each other that way and take Tyreek Hill and run him on the vertical and Waddle on the underneath or vice versa, like, you can do that. So more of a commitment to taking advantage of where this team has grown since Tua was last in the lineup. And I think there has been significant growth in the run game. I think Alec Ingold, especially if you take away the fumble, has played 2 nice games from a blocking perspective. He should probably stay in that role. I think Julian Hill, as the inline blocker and the inline tight end, has shown growth. Jonnu Smith has shown growth as the receiving option and foil. At this point, I would fade Durham Smythe entirely. I would let Jonnu, Julian, and Alec take the snaps at that spot. Because they've kind of got a little bit more specialization that is popping in some way, shape, or form. I would not go back to being a super avid 11 personnel team in obvious passing situations. I think with Jonnu Smith, like there are other ways that I think you can take what has happened in the last month and apply it into, okay, now the quarterback's back. Whether or not they actually do that, I mean, it remains to be seen. That's the big test is okay, all of these things that have happened are great, but can you apply the lessons and do them? And that's part of the evaluation of Mike McDaniel. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. You can come back again tomorrow. We have crossover with Locked On Cardinals with Alex Clancy, getting you ready for Dolphins Cardinals in Week 8. That is coming your way tomorrow. We hope to see that.